Kia ora whānau, kia ora te whānau, ko Waio, ko tapuai o Nuku te maunga, ko Waio toa te awa, ko Takitimu te waka, ko Takahanga te marae, ko Ngāti Kuri te hapu, ko Naitahi te iwi, ko Stevens tōku ingoa whānau ko Aroha au. My name is Aroha. I'm a STOP facilitator. Prior to my experience with STOP, I was a primary school teacher for 15 years, and I'm also the mama of 5 beautiful kōtero, ranging from the ages of 9 to 22 years old. Thank you for having us here today. Hopefully we can help empower you and equip you in these conversations that you'll be having with tamariki around sexualised planned behaviour.
Tēnā koutou katoa, ko pukakiwi te tēnā wana, ko tawharihiri te mawana. No tamakina kaura aho, e te whahi ki papakura, I ngāri nofo ana hau kira te tahi and I name. Cordlin Jansen, toka ingoa, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa. Thank you very much for the opportunity for Aroha and I to kind of share in your hui today. I believe we've got roughly less than 60 minutes to kind of, I guess, have a kōrero to present a little bit about the mahi that we are doing. And an area that we're pretty passionate about, which is around equipping kaimahi like yourselves to really sit alongside whānau, sit alongside family when conversations kind of arise around sexualised planned behaviour that might happen between children. So that is going to be our focus for today, looking at that age group under 12. My name's Lynn. I'm the Prevention Education Lead with the STOP Services based here in Otatahi, and originally hail from Auckland, grew up in Papakura, and I too are a mum of 3 of my children. I've been in Christchurch for a little over 23 years and have been in the harmful sexual behaviour space for a little over 20 years. And have the great privilege, I guess, to be able to be in this prevention education space because we haven't always been in the, it's always been like the ambulance at the bottom of the cliff. And I just want to acknowledge the STOP services and all the colleagues that we sit alongside so closely who are doing the clinical work, the hard trauma work, when children come across our path, and extending our mahi into this prevention space so that all adults in positions of responsibility and duty of care, like yourself as Family Start kaimahi, educators, teachers, preschool teachers, have a little bit more understanding of how to approach sexualised planned behaviour between children. So the STOP services have been around since the 80s, and over the last 13 years, our mahi has specialised in working with children and adolescents and adults who have kind of got it wrong, who've made the mistakes, who have caused harm. And we're based in the South Island. We have got offices, as you can see, across Te Waipounamu. And our mission and our vision is hei hapori wātia kātokai. So to kind of really work towards a community free of sexual harm. And I just want to acknowledge also the other services in Aotearoa who are also in the sector, which is Well Stop, based in Wellington, and Safe, based in Auckland, who are also doing some similar mahi. So look, what Aroha and I are hoping to do today is just cover some key things around some reflections for yourself in this space and the working that you're doing alongside whānau. So looking at values and differing perspectives in this space, there's a whole lot of normal and a whole lot of different, normal families that you will be well aware of, and what you also bring into this space as well, your life experiences, your learning, your lens. Talking a little bit about language, because language is so important. How do we talk about a really big topic and keep it as simple as we can? And what is developmentally age expected behaviour? Where would we be concerned? Where will we be worried when it crosses that line to becoming, not just kind of curious, inquisitive, innocent, kids will be kids kind of planned behaviour?
Just before launch into these kind of platforms, I want to, so usually in our face-to-face workshops, we would offer people the opportunity to check and with themselves, knowing that concerning sexualised behaviour can be quite a sensitive topic. So just for you to allow yourself those strategies and remind yourself of how you keep yourself keep your nervous system calm if you are triggered for whatever reason. Just take care. Usually we go much more gently. I feel like this hui is a little bit more on, kind of like our training on steroids. So there may be some things that make you go, oh, I wasn't quite ready for that. Or I didn't realise they were going to talk about that today. So just be kind to yourself, go gently. And I'm sure that you'll have supports within your organisation to help you unpack if you need to. If you don't, you can call us and we can help you unpack as well. So the types of things that we're encouraging for whānau, caregiver, anybody that's working with children is that promotion of safe boundaries. And we do it all the time. We do it physical context constantly, I would say, as parents and caregivers. But what we want people to do is think more broadly in the sense of touch in the way that we play and what that looks like in regards to safety. There's lots of rules and guidelines for most of the things that we do. So if we just once again think beyond the traditional rules and concepts of, i.e., you're not allowed to play here, I'd like you to play over here, also be quite clear about the way that you'd like children to play. So giving them guidance in regards to, actually, we're not going to touch each other on the bottom today. We've worked out that our friends don't like that. That's not actually okay. That's not a nice way to play. Let's just remember that when we play tag, we're going to touch each other's arms and each other's legs. Something along those lines.
I think that's the beauty of just keeping it really simple when we're talking to children. Sometimes I think, like, what are the messages that we want to give our babes, our 3, our 4, our 5, our 6-year-olds at kindy, at preschool, at school? Because you know what? The messages don't change much, actually. It really is about that respect, personal space, keeping our pants on, that our bodies are...
We went right there, didn't we, Lynn? We went right there. Keep your pants on.
The messages don't actually really change up into our rangatahi space, with our 13-year-olds and our 16-year-olds. It's all around respect and just being mindful of when you enter into people's personal space and if you're down trowing and if you're touching parts of the body, actually, that people don't want to have touch, then there's just an awareness, isn't there? So.
Definitely. And as adults, sometimes we need to help shape up those guidelines. We need to be the people that come in and say, hey, actually, when we're playing touch or tag, we're not going to sack tat.
So we're going to keep it simple today. We're going to keep it light, but I also want to acknowledge in our country, the statistics for people, for our tamariki who are being impacted by sexual harm is not okay. We've still got 1 in 3 of our girls and I believe 1 in 7 of our boys, although they say that it's potentially underreported. And it's very exciting to be part of a much bigger picture here for Aotearoa with the government, who has put in a national strategy, Te Arere Kura, to be able to eliminate family violence and second violence over the next 25 years. And so what a great thing to be involved with. We've got a long way to go. And I guess for the stop services and people that are doing this mahi, we need to start somewhere. Education, to find a language to be able to open these doors of a big topic that sometimes has been slammed shut or swept under the carpet, because so many parents come across our path and they're just like, well, when do I begin these conversations with my kids? And heck, how do I start? My parents never talked to me about this. So, and then there's other parents and families that are just doing a stunning job of those conversations, that it's not the big chat anymore. It starts early, and lots of opportunities when those questions come, bath time, getting changed at the swimming pools, learning opportunities all the time to kind of just enforce those 101 messages about what's okay, what's not okay. Yeah.
When we respond to sexualised play and behaviour, a lot of the time, though we say we like to address these types of play and behaviours with very little judgment. That's not actually always the case, and we do have a certain amount of bias that we carry with us. It's just part of being human. So when we talk about values and difference, what we're really trying to do is unpack some of our own bias and judgment. So when we are having these conversations, we are going in the most mana-enhancing way possible. So for some people, obviously, values and difference is really, really vast. As you can see up on the screen there's lots of things related to sexual concepts. And even when we're talking about personal boundaries, like Lynn and I, even here together on different days, have really different types of boundaries. Sometimes we're okay with people really close. Other times you'd want people far, far away. So, and that's just 2 people sitting in the room. I wonder what it looks like, in a room of 100. In regards to all the other concepts up there, I could imagine that you'd have these continuums of people that, sometimes nudity is acceptable in their home, and then other times you are fully clothed in front of other people all of the time. Lynn, did you want to add to anything there?
You'll be very aware of the different families and whānau that you work with. I've worked with mums where kissing their children on the lips is perfectly normal to send them off to school and to say goodnight, to go to bed. And then I've worked with other mums where actually kissing their kids on the lips would be not okay. That feels yucky or feels too intrusive. I've worked with, bathing and showering at home is perfectly normal. And so the children in the family see adults and other siblings just freely naked and getting changed. And I've worked with other families where actually that would never happen, and the children would never see the adults particularly naked or with no clothes on. Work with families where the boundaries are very loose at home. Children sometimes walk in on intimate moments for adults accidentally, and then there's other adults that I've worked with where their boundaries around adult sexual behaviour at home is very loose, and children are seeing and carrying a whole lot of behaviours that perhaps aren't all that helpful for them. I've walked into homes where I remember doing a home visit one time, and where I was working with a wee 8-year-old boy who was engaging and initiating in some sexualised behaviour at home with some younger siblings and a cousin, and engaging with this family. Did a home visit and walked into the lounge to find a number of quite explicit pornographic posters just on display within the lounge at home. And so coming back to your experiences of going into homes with the families that you work with, you will be seeing and hearing a whole lot. And there was conversation to have with that family in terms of just perhaps the confusion that might be having, given that they've got an 8-year-old boy who's got who's needing some support around his own planned behaviour. And that was the mahi that we did with parents that kind of had no concept that wouldn't be okay. Same with, adults can do whatever they want in the privacy of their own home. They can watch whatever movies, whatever explicit material they want to. But as soon as you've got a little person looking over your shoulder or being exposed to that, it does have an impact. And, when those images and that material is explicit and adult and R-rated, that's causing harm, and our little ones' brains are not prepared to be exposed to that. Hence, it trickles over into sometimes children playing to process some of the stuff that they've been exposed to or seen. Yeah, not always, but just one.
So when we're addressing these types of plays, the play and behaviour that you might see with young tamariki, whether it's kissing someone on the lips without permission, or whether it's pulling somebody else's trousers down, we are always trying to uphold the mana of all the children involved. We try to leave them with guidance moving forward, but zero shame. We always like to consider Dame Whina Cooper's kaupapa about ensuring that we're really, really careful about the way that children feel, because we know that when shame is felt, that's when the head goes down, and then sometimes the behaviour will go elsewhere. It doesn't always stop, but it becomes more secretive. So we just want to keep things really open, really honest, go really kindly, and be really brave as adults to continue to enhance our tamarikis mana. When we talk about language, we are quite specific in this space about what we support. So from our perspective, we do encourage whānau to use the medical language for genitalia. Primarily, there's a few reasons. The fact that there are lots of different, can I say pet names? Is it pet names for genitalia? Slang, yep. So all those other names that are not within that medical category can and do promote this concept of shame about those parts of our bodies. So we don't call these our grabbers. I don't say I'm going to go get a cup of tea with my grabbers, or that I'm actually going to, smell this beautiful flower with my sniffer. Like these are my hands, these are my fingers, and this is my nose. And it very rarely gets called anything else. For some reason or another, there are lots and lots of words for genitalia that are not breasts, vulva, penis, etc. So which does create that space of shame. And we're really trying to work against that, because we want our children to be able to tell us anything they need to tell us whenever they need to tell us.
Sometimes do we hear adults saying to kids, don't touch your willy, it'll drop off or you'll go blind. I mean, there's been a lot of messages, I think, growing up that have created a sense of yuckiness or dirtiness for our kids. I mean, our ECE and our whānau and our preschool teachers do this so well. They do use the proper names, and the rationale is that then the children do have the language for if anyone is touching their penis or their vulva or vagina, then they've got the words to be able to tell a safe adult. But I guess, there needs to be not one size fits all either. Work with families that actually talking about boobies and willies and titties, and we're not saying that that's still not okay. It's just that we want the children to also know what the proper names are so that they have that language. And one of the key takeaways for today, I think, is just that awareness of, in your own practice, that understanding of looking through a child's lens and their language versus perhaps an adolescent or an adult lens. So we kind of then start moving into the language that we describe or observe when kids are engaging in behaviours together. And you'll notice the list on the left on the screen that, kids have all sorts of names, don't they? Playing a bum-bum game.
Tell me about this game.
Couldn't play the bum-bum game. Yeah. Many examples, I guess, if we can just kind of explain where sometimes professionals will talk with us to explain perhaps there's been an incident of behaviour that's happened between two children that's involved engaging in oral sex. So that's a very adult kind of terminology to be explaining behaviour, especially when the kids might be 4 or even 6. So then we start to have a little bit of a think around context and the intent, and why might the children be engaging in this level of behaviour, which is not really age expected. We're not wanting, we're needing some safe support and some scaffolding around that. But I guess the message is to not get fancy with your language when we're talking about children. And that kind of goes also with just being awareness of our own language in our professional space.
Yeah, so obviously, up here it just says labels are for jars and not for people. Like 100% support that for karo. Like when we label people with this type of kōrero, i.e. predator, deviant, molester, creep, offender, predator, or perpetrator, or perp, that's out there, it's definitely not helpful. It doesn't help find solutions. It creates more shame, generally a fair amount of harm. And if you look at the quote there, I'd like to refer a 5-year-old paedophile, which has been heard over the telephone. It's not even rational. So would really like for people just to even consider your inner dialogue. These are, when we're talking about this type of play, this is somebody's child. It could be your child, you know, and I'm pretty sure the last thing we want is other whānau standing around going, oh, not really, no, that's a wee creep, you know. Really don't want that wee perpetrator coming to play again today, because actually our homie just got it wrong. He saw something that he may have been trying to make sense of and played it out with his friends, and therefore is labelled and stigmatised in this really negative way, which doesn't help us grow or move forward. If we talk about the behaviour in a really accurate manner, then we can help find solutions and find a way forward. And my friend doesn't get left behind and doesn't get left with this really massive, heavy weight of something that is far outside of their neurological thinking space.
But here's the balance, because sexual offending and sexual harm and sexual abuse over the centuries is not welcomed, and we still have a lot of people who, just want to lock these people up and throw away the key. And I also want to acknowledge the people that are being harmed here, you know. But if you're a mum or a dad or a nanny and it's your child that's been impacted by a 7-year-old at school who's actually really not being a safe friend and really being invasive and sometimes initiating some quite intrusive, penetrative behaviour, then absolutely that is incredibly distressing and not okay. So it's this balance with children of really putting some supports in place, but not put it, just being aware, I guess, and reflective of the language that we use. So the language that you use when you're working with family also, you will be hearing perhaps parents and caregivers talk quite an adult language around their own children or around others' children, and just to be mindful of keeping that into a language that best fits for the kids. So, what is healthy developmentally age-expected sexualised play and behaviour? Well, we all know that children meet milestones. You know, you think of our babies as they're growing through their first couple of months. They're rolling over, they're lifting their head up, they're crawling, they start to walk. And look, sexualised play and behaviour and curiosity and intimacy and all of that is just part of the natural part of the little person developing and growing. And we all know that kids sometimes will be kids. We all know that sometimes the cousins will be playing in the wardrobe and they'll be playing, you show me yours and I'll show you mine. They'll be playing doctors and nurses. They'll be playing kiss and catch. You know, they'll be playing families, they'll be playing getting married, they'll be playing breastfeeding. There's a whole lot of normal, and I think that we need to be reminded that there is a whole lot of normal age-expected behaviour. We used to call it normal sexualised behaviour. We used to talk about it as appropriate sexualised behaviour, but, you know, sometimes when you're telling room jokes with your mates, you know, when you're 10, it might be appropriate and age expected, you know, when you're out of the field at school telling the jokes, but actually, you know, when you're at Tawa's house, that's right. It's not okay to tell the rude jokes at Tawa's house. That's right. So understanding the context of what's okay, what's not okay. So there's no manual for this. On our website, we do have this booklet which kind of creates a good guide of what to expect throughout the ages, either from 0 to 2, from 3 to 5. And, you know, it's not unusual for our 3 and 4-year-olds to be fascinated about their orifices. That's why peas go up noses and things get inserted in different places. That's why sometimes mum might walk into the bathroom when our little one might be in the bath and using the bath toy putting inside her vagina or her bottom. Now, there's a fantastic learning moment. I've had many times where adults might respond quite over the top and freak out about that, like, what the heck are you doing? Let alone, and that could be mild, let's be honest. It can be a much bigger reaction, which is really quite damaging for our babes. Especially if you add a cousin or a step sibling or a brother or a sister in that scenario, or two families coming together and the kids are bathing together, and then you get the scenario of what's okay, what's not okay. So it doesn't mean that we want our little ones to be doing that level of behaviour, but there's the safe adult conversation to say, you know what, our bottoms, our vaginas, the poos and weeks to come out of, or whatever the explanation is, not fancy, just actually we don't put things into our bottoms.
Yeah.
Or our,
Really similar to that we don't put things up our nostrils or inside our ears. Yeah, orifice, very, very similar.
I remember a lovely story from a preschool that came through where two children were suckling on each other's nipples, and they were little, and it would perhaps be an opportunity to think, well, they're just breastfeeding, but actually this particular manager shared that that she, in her 20 years of experience in working with a preschool, had not seen that behaviour before. And when I thought about it, it's just like, well, I hadn't either. I've seen children engage in breastfeeding the dolls. And so her question was in the phone call, like, how worried should I be? And so then that starts the conversation about well, I wonder what they were playing, and I wonder how come, and having a little bit more context of what might be happening at home. And this is where it's hard, because some of you will have gone, oh, there must be a new baby in the family, which in this case it was innocent, and this wee 4-year-old had observed auntie breastfeeding a new baby in the family, which he had never experienced or seen before. And so he was planning to process something that perhaps hadn't been discussed with his mum. However, it doesn't always necessarily, it's not always that innocent. And he equally may have seen this by adults at home engaging in sexualised behaviour, or maybe have seen some stuff online. And so this is where, in your role, when you're hearing these stories, we're just really wanting you to be prepared, if it hasn't come across your mahi already, with conversations with families, to be prepared that mums and dads and nanas and granddads might want to have these conversations to just check out with you. And you don't need to have the answers, but sometimes you are that safe person to just unpack perhaps what's been observed, and then to be able to put some things in place in terms of, let's call someone who kind of specialises in this area to just run it past them and have a bit of a chat to see how we can respond, effectively for the best interests of the kids. Got a picture up here of, this could be a typical Kiwi scene, couldn't it, of kids play fighting in the lounge. And I guess when play fighting's a good example, actually, of thinking about sexualised play and behaviour as well. So if this was a play fighting situation that was in the green, if you think of our traffic light, with green being age expected, developmentally expected behaviour, through to orange, which is kind of crossing that line into being a little bit more concerning, not what we'd be expecting, through to the red, which is, harmful. What would be some of the things that, if this was healthy now?
So when I see this initially in my whare, I'd be like, get outside and play that game. But if they were allowed to stay and play inside, I would expect that they would be laughing, and there'd be lots of giggling, and that everybody would be playing in a, and what I would see is a fair manner. So everybody's contributing to the play. But yeah, definitely lots of giggling, lots of laughing. All the happy sounds.
Yes. And mutual. Everyone's in on this.
Yeah.
I mean, personal space is being broken.
Yeah.
So there's no private parts being touched. There's no fingers into bottoms. It's healthy and everyone's having fun. But if we were to look at it through more of an orange lens,
yeah, definitely when we would be getting a bit concerned. Probably when somebody down the bottom maybe is no longer laughing, or there's no longer happy sounds coming from that space, or possibly that, like, that louder, lots of whining happens at my house, so there might be some whining going on by that stage. Basically, where would I see, I might not be able to see all the limbs, and that would probably make me go, where are your hands, or where did your foot end up, kind of thing. Yeah.
So sometimes the lying on top of each other might then kind of extend to perhaps humping someone that they're lying on.
And so hands up, hands up shirts.
And I know that this is kind of like quite a simple example with play fighting, but that this does cross over into our rangatahi as well. You know, sexualised behaviour often starts healthy and mutual, and there's a fine line of it crossing the line to then not mutual.
Yeah, that no, get off, I don't want to play anymore.
Or angry, stop it, get off me. Or sometimes silence. You know, sometimes
that quiet stuff.
neither of the boys do they, to be able to say, actually, I'm not comfortable with this anymore, it needs to stop. And that's what I think that we need to kind of keep equipping our tamariki with. Sorry. And then I guess if we were moving into more of a harmful lens in the rear, we would be seeing, you know, a bit more force and aggression.
Yeah.
Holding kids down.
Yeah.
Someone else pulling down their pants.
Yep, distress.
Intrusive, penetrative, fingers in bottoms, vaginas, you know, not okay stuff. So it's just a wee bit of what we're really encouraging all of our parents and caregivers and adults in positions of care is to step in early. Because we all know that play fighting ends in tears often. No difference with sexualised behaviour and boundaries. Stepping in, being able to name it, put boundaries in place to prevent and minimise further escalation of sexualised behaviour. A few indicators of what to be looking out for when sexualised behaviour is in the green, when it moves over into the orange. In the orange, it's a bit more sneaky and a bit more secretive, you know. You might have a wee girl who says, come into the toilet and pull down their pants and show me your fanny, but don't you tell anyone. And
Or you're not coming to my birthday party.
yeah. So again, you can cross that over into an adult saying this, you know, like the messages that we're giving today seem quite a little bit more simple or because we're talking about children, but can you see how it kind of just can cross over developmentally into adolescents and adults? When there's secrets, don't tell anyone, you'll get into trouble, I won't be your friend. And then moving into the harmful indicators of sexualised behaviour. So this is just a guideline as inequalities. You know, when you've got a 10-year-old with a 5-year-old, you're going to be a little bit more concerned about what's going on as opposed to two 10-year-olds, but not always, because sometimes if you've got two 10-year-olds, one's knowledge and life experience might be far more advanced than the other 10-year-old. Or you might have a 12-year-old who's engaging in wanting to play sexualised behaviour with a 6-year-old, but, you know, that 12-year-old might come with some global developmental delay of some sort, might be, you know, have lower cognitive functioning. And kind of like sometimes that quirky kid, you know, the kid that doesn't have friends with his own or her own age group and feels much more comfortable with playing with the younger children.
Yeah. So that kind of intention, I feel like you're sharing that intention of that play there, aren't you? So, you know, for a lot of our babes, when they're trying to communicate with other tamariki, whether their own age or not, most of the time it's about connection, yeah? So wanting friendship, wanting connection, and they're not always going about it in the right way, sadly. So that's where we need to step in, put some good safe boundaries in place. As Lynn said, if we start really early on and we get those foundations really solid, they carry them right through their life, yeah? In regards to actually, if I'm going to touch somebody, I need to ask for their permission. We have that kōrero in our whare all the time. I was always a big old hugger, like just get in there and hug everybody flat out because I love that. But it turns out not everybody else loves that. So we've had to adapt and change our practice in regards to that respect that we give for other people in their space. And we definitely honour adults. I noticed in my whānau, but for me and my children, it's really important that we show that for children as well. You know, we need to definitely maintain their mana, set those boundaries and help them get it right.
And using those opportunities to, you know, when you stand too close or when you poke, you know, zingy in the bum, actually, you know, your friend doesn't like that. And that's the name it, stop it, move on, telling our kids what we do want them to do to minimise it from escalating, because we do know sexualised behaviour can be contagious. You got, you know, two cousins or two friends playing a particular game, well, it can soon kind of habituate to having 4 or 6 kids playing that game. That's what we're noticing also in schools as well. So just paying attention and being aware when you're having conversations with the family and whānau that you're involved with, that they're just kind of tuning in and being aware of when kids are complaining about stuff. You know, I don't want that friend to come over anymore, or I don't want to go and stay over at someone's place, or, you know, I don't feel comfortable getting changed swimming at school. You know, and most kids will respond to safe adult guidance around boundaries and safe touch, and we don't pull our pants down, we don't show our bottoms, we don't play bottom games. Most kids will respond, but there's also a lot of our tamariki who, for all sorts of reasons, don't get it the first time and need a lot more scaffolding and support and reminders from safe adults in their lives how close to sit to people, that you just don't rush on up and give people a kiss on the lips, you know. So this is where I think it's simple, but those conversations are where we need to start.
Yeah, it's definitely is a lot like, you know, how you've got that child in your whare that always prepares themselves well before they go and ride their bicycle and do all the safety things that they need to. And there's that other child that you've got to say 15 times, do you have footwear? Do you have your helmet? Do you have footwear? Do you have your helmet? Like, same kind of thing with sexualised play and behaviour. Some children need lots of scaffolding and lots of reminders, where other babes tika.
So just moving on, just looking at sexualised behaviour through a child's lens. You know, if I can use an example of again, two little 4-year-olds, they're mates, they're at kindy together. You know, they're out in the bushes. One boy's got his track pants and his undies down by his ankles, and he's bending over, and his mate is very, very close, looking very intently into his mate's anus, into his bottom. So again, you know, age expected. Well, what is going on here? You know, is this mutual? Was it okay for both?
No. Everybody seems happy, don't they? Everybody seems happy and calm.
The one that's looking, or the one that's got his undies down? And so here we start thinking about looking at the context. And this is where you and us as parents, caregivers, kaimahi, adults, teachers, just need to, when we come across these situations, to firstly be prepared as best as possible, but to be curious.
Yeah, kia tau whānau. Kia tau. Take a big deep breath.
Safety always, but like first responders, hey, actually, I see that you've got your pants down. At kindy we keep our pants up. I'm just wondering what's happening. What are you doing? What are you playing? So we don't know why. It could be something that, again, this little person has seen on the internet and be quite yucky and wanting, you know, leading up to something else that might be more intrusive. Finger into a bottom, kissing bottoms, kissing penises, whatever it might be. But if I was to tell you that in this context, the boy looking into his mate's bottom had worms, and his mum had been checking his bottom for the last couple of days. And, you know, when you're 4, when an adult talks about having worms in your bottom, and the adult hasn't explained that these worms might not be the garden worms that you're thinking of, you know, there's some curiosity about checking out with your mate whether he might have worms in his bottom. So,
and there's a good chance you don't think worms are healthy, trying to offer your friends, helping a homie out.
So situations that sometimes can be fairly innocent need us as safe adults to slow down, have a cuppa, keep calm, ask the questions to get the context, and no difference really for our adolescents as well, and to get a sense of how mutual this was, what's happening to them, to be able to put some safe boundaries in place.
So when we're trying to peel back those layers, to gather the context, obviously, we want to ask some really open-ended questions. We don't want to start, loading up their answers. We want to go, hey, tell me about this. Oh, I'm wondering why Henry's got his pants down. Actually, we're going to pull them up, babe, because we don't keep our, we keep our pants up at school. So as you unpack the context, it's so much easier to understand the intention. Obviously, this guy was playing to process here. He was really curious. He was playing to process. For me, I'd be thinking that he's trying to uffie his friend and make sure he's in good health also.
But I guess in terms of some takeaways, we're wanting to really give you a little bit of confidence and understanding in terms of your own reflective practice to just slow down enough with the families that you're working with when sexualised behaviour does come across your path, to understand the context. There may be trauma. Kids may have experienced some really tough stuff. Kids are on the autism spectrum. There's a whole lot of reasons, or it just might be simply curiosity, and to really slow down to understand the context of the behaviour, and to be reminded that you're not the police, you're not the evidential interviewer, yeah. You're not the Oranga Tamariki social worker or the stop specialist clinician, but please don't underestimate the very important role that you have to just sit alongside the family and whānau that you connect with as a safe adult. And when you feel that this would be worth following through to get some support from a specialist agency, you know that you can contact the stop services. We have, anything from 5 to 25 phone calls a week of all sorts of people ringing up to just check out whether we need to be more concerned about this or not. And we'll navigate and help guide you, as will our other agencies in the sector, Well Stop based in Wellington and Safe based in Tapaki Makota.
Tēnā kōrua whānau mā. I do have a pātai that did come through, and the question that was put forward was, how can we ensure that our responses to sexualised behaviour align with culturally sensitive practices? So I guess when we're talking about mana enhancing, how do we articulate mana and mana enhancing, etc.
I think families in kaimahi can bring all of themselves into this conversation in space. There's not one size that fits all, and all of you will bring your own selves, and you will have the connection with the family and families and whānau that you're working with. I think so much of it comes back to safety and trust and connection, and however we give these messages in an appropriate way for all the families that we work with.
Yeah. And that looks different, for each whānau. So all the kaimahi that's sort of in front of us today will go, actually, for this whānau, this is the way that I would share this message. So the message still has the same value, but it's just going to be offered in a different way, and that's about you knowing your whānau really, really well. The kaimahi had the key to that. And culturally, it is really interesting. At my house, we don't say words like wheni and fufu. It's not logical to us. I find it, ridiculous. I'm just like, please don't talk to my children like that. We actually speak really medical terms, like whether it's in te reo Māori or in te reo English, either way is kei te pai koe. But yet other people struggle with the word vagina, they're squirming all over the floor as they say vulva today. So it's about knowing your whānau, but still sharing the same safety messages. We can't, as Lynn said with our statistics, we can't avoid this kōrero. Too many of our tamariki are being harmed in this space. And the way that we're going to eliminate harm is by being brave and proactive in this very preventative space, i.e. equipping our tamariki with reo that they can accurately describe to adults when they need assistance.
I think too it's really important to go back to your agencies that you've connected with to kind of just make sure that you get that cultural guidance, that supervision, that, policy is one thing, but actually process is the doing. And there'll be many ethnicities, across Aotearoa that one size does not fit all. So for example, if I'm working with the family where actually it is really just not okay for me to be having this conversation alone with the dad for whatever reason, then, we need to put our professional hat on and our empathy and our cultural understanding to make that a really safe space. And how we can make that work, does there need to be a support person? Can I bring someone else alongside me to make this more effective?
Yeah. But the conversation still needs to be had, yeah.
What self-care strategies can kaimahi employ when dealing with challenging cases of sexualised behaviour between tamariki?
Another beautiful question and a very key question for us all working in this very big space. The work that we do with family and whānau is not easy. We often say, we're not selling insurance, but I don't mean to be, like, we're dealing with people, aren't we? And we all know what we need to do to be able to bring our best selves into this space. Sometimes that is just acknowledging what we need to do: sleep, eat, walking on the beach, slowing down, taking 5 minutes before we go and meet with the family to just be in that calm space, which we have a duty of care to do for our families. And recognising when the big stuff really comes across our path. For people who experience sexual harm, which is going to be a lot of parents and adults that we work with, as well as a lot of professionals who come with the journey of hard, tough stuff and trauma that get triggered, that perhaps, feels it's too big. I think just an awareness of that, and to not underestimate the empathy that perhaps you might bring into that space, because perhaps you haven't walked that journey, but you kind of have an understanding and you can be with that person without having to really give a whole lot apart from just the treasure of what it is to hear other people's stories. So using your supervision, using your self-care to be aware of how regulated you are, how triggered you might be, what supports you might need to have in place to be able to have these conversations. And I think also understanding what your limits are. And I think sometimes it's a very safe thing to be able to say, wow, this is really big, and I thank you so much for sharing with me. And you know what? I'm going to go away and I'm going to seek some support and some advice and some guidance to kind of come back and help navigate this together.
Yeah, I think that's quite important that you can be able to acknowledge that you are not the person that needs to fix everything right here, right now. That there are lots of supports in place. Depending on what the play and behaviour looks like, sometimes you're actually going to come into a space and you're like, actually, bub, you might uncover something that maybe, let's just say there's somebody with their hands down their pants frequently. It may look like some type of sexualised motion. The reality is that you might uncover that somebody has a hefty case of eczema in and around their genitalia. Like, how cool is it that you were brave enough to go, oh, bub, I've noticed you've had your hands down your pants a lot. Is there something going on there? And if you give them the opportunity to speak, sometimes they'll let you know. They're like, oh, I'm really itchy. And I'm like, oh, Pai, no, talk to your parents. Let's try and work this out for you. Where some people just be like, oh, that dirty hill where he's got his hands down his pants all the time. That's, if you are lucky enough to roll into one of these scenarios where you can navigate it effectively and quickly, give yourself a big old pat on the back. Like, I think that's a really important part of self-care too, is actually going, I was brave enough to have that conversation with that tamariki when nobody else wanted to. Yeah, mate, like, kia ora, e hoa, you did a great job. And then obviously you've also assisted in another health space as well. So yeah, acknowledging that you don't have to do all of the things, fix it right now by yourself, and actually, yeah, giving yourself a bit of a clap when you do the courageous mahi.
Tēnā koro, I just have one more question that's just come through in regards to labelling. Is this also for adults, like not labelling the offending? I think there was a question in there in regards to the difference between like adults and adolescents. Like, how do we...
Yeah, great questions. The labelling and the language has been something that us as a sector have thrown around for the last 30 years, really. And different countries use different languaging as well. I think Australia talks about problematic sexualised behaviour. Yeah, look, we've moved from sexual abuse, although sexual abuse is still used to describe sexual harm. You know, the police have moved into also using family violence, sexual violence, and we kind of, I think over the last few years have moved into that kind of languaging as well. I think sexual harm is sexual harm, and I guess the kōrero today is to just keep us reflecting on the language and how productive that is and how effective that is. For people that have been harmed, you know, sometimes they referring to themselves as being a victim of sexual abuse is part of their healing journey, and that's really important to them. Sometimes people don't want to be kind of talk about being a victim or a survivor of sexual harm. That doesn't work for them. And so it kind of comes back to that one size not fits all. So our message today is when we're talking about 12 and unders, yeah, let's just be cautious that we don't put that adolescent and that adult language onto our little ones. And just remember that wee 4-year-old or that wee 8-year-old will eventually become that 16-year-old and that 25-year-old. And sometimes they also bring their own stories of trauma and harm and sexual harm and have been victims of. Not always. And I guess it's just that understanding of it's not okay for anyone to hurt anyone else. Mm. And no matter what age they are, they need to take responsibility and get some support for that. So, sorry, that was a bit of a roundabout way to answer that question. I think there's not one size fits all.
Yeah, once again, feels like a big, long continuum. For me personally, I kind of liken labels to name calling, and in our whare and our whānau collectively, as a rōpū, we're not big fans of name calling, yeah. So we just talk about behaviour, whether you're a child or an adult, because we're still learning, you know, adults make mistakes all the time. And that's something that we've created in our space for our whānau. Labels, i.e. names, can sometimes provide a space for children to grow into or even adults to develop into. And actually, if it's a negative label, then why on earth would we want to offer that to them? We don't want to see in these kind of self-fulfilling prophecies. We want to keep upholding people's mana and helping them grow in a positive direction.
I was going to leave this pātai and have the whānau that are wanting to ask more pātai to make contact with you. But I think this is probably quite a relevant pātai that we can close off with, is how can we differentiate between age-appropriate exploration and sexualised behaviour in tamariki?
There's a couple of things. When it becomes an explicit behaviour, explicit language, explicit adult terminology, gestures, that's a good indicator. I think when there's an age difference, that becomes an issue. I think when the frequency continues, so when tamariki aren't responding to safe adult guidance, that it's not okay to be engaging in those behaviours, but children continue to still do that.
Can I just quickly go back to like the kind of developmentally age expected things? And I think if we focus here and then things fall outside of that, that's, you know, when you need to be concerned and you go and get guidance. So i.e. is the play mutual? Is it innocent? Is it curious? Obviously there's an age expected band there that's a little bit confusing, isn't it? But it is the wee booklet that we do have available for you online, and it just gives you some guidelines. And when you read through the list, you go, oh yeah, that's right, 3 or 4 year olds are super fascinated at looking at other people's bodies. You know, they're not being perverts or predators. They're watching other people maybe use the bathroom or getting changed because they're completely fascinated. Yep, so there's those wee lists there. You might want to use that. Is it open? Is it an open, safe space where other adults can see, other children can see, and people can actually say, hey, bub, we don't play like that here? That's all within that age-expected space. It's respectful in the word safe down there as well. So what we would do is, even though these are age-expected behaviours with the mutual innocence, curiosity, there's still teaching moments here, because most of the time they'll be happening in a space that you're like, actually, darling, you're not supposed to rub your penis when you're on the mat. That's something that you're supposed to do in your private space. But if it doesn't fit within this kind of vibe, because it is a vibe and we're allowed to trust our instincts, that's when we would seek support from a colleague, yeah, and just say, hey, can I run this by you? You know, how do you feel about this? Do you think that this is moving into that kind of concerning space? And we definitely know when things are harmful, way. Like, we definitely know, like we just know as human beings when things are not right. So yeah, if we focus on this stuff and it kind of comes outside of the boundaries of this kōrero, then yeah, go bounce it off someone.
Then Crystal, just to finish, I guess, is, and we haven't had time in our webinar today to go into any depth, but as adults living in a very technological world, being educated and to have a really awareness and understanding of the massive impact that that pornography, that explicit images are having for our tamariki also. That's another whole webinar, and it's enough.
As we come to the end of this enlightening workshop on addressing sexualized behavior, I want to take a moment to reflect on the valuable insights and discussions that have unfolded over the course of this paku wānanga. Our understanding has deepened with a renewed commitment to creating safe and respectable spaces for everyone, especially for our tamariki mokopuna. Kei te whakatau, te whakamihi ake o mātou, kai whakapaukaha me ki, kua whai mana a Lynn raua a korua ko Aroha, mo te whakawhiti kōrero i o rātou mātauranga, me o rātou kōrero ki a mātou. A very thoughtful presentation that sheds light on the complexities of this topic and provided us with actionable strategies for addressing and responding to sexualized behavior in various contexts. As we conclude this workshop, let's carry forward the knowledge gained and the connections made, and let's continue to be champions for safe and respectful communities, especially for our tamariki mokopuna. E mihi ana ki a koutou katoa, mo o koutou wā, nā kau hihiko, me te aroha ki te whakatūtuki i te erekētanga.